The mystery of life. What is the meaning of life, if there is any? How I answer this question depends on my understanding of the world. But our different understandings may be closer to or further from the truth. The meaning of life must be related, ultimately, to what the nature of reality actually is. The otherwise relatively unknown Danish modern mystic and thinker Martinus deserves consideration in this context. He has presented a comprehensive worldview or metaphysical system that broadly describes reality in its entirety. His view is considered controversial, but it exhibits an explanatory power that seems to surpass other major worldviews, including materialism, which claims that ultimately nothing exists except for the physical world. Within the framework of Martinus's worldview, it is possible to account for things that confound the materialist position, such as the question concerning human beings' true self, a continued existence after death, insight, ethics, and happiness, and the fundamental nature of reality more generally. In this video, I will outline some of the most relevant aspects of this worldview, specifically those concerning the nature of reality and the meaning of life. To describe his view, Martinus uses the term spiritual science because it rationally or logically describes the aspects of reality that go beyond the physical world in the same way the sciences rationally describes the physical components of the world. Centuries ago, people based their understanding of reality on religious systems, but today, as Martinus accurately points out, many people are no longer able to accept claims about the world based solely on the authority of religious figures. These people who need arguments based on logic are Martinus's target audience. According to Martinus's spiritual science, we possess an inner I that constitutes our true self. Thus, our body is a tool for experiencing life rather than the thing that makes us exist. In other words, there is something behind our physical existence. This self or I, as in I am. All our experiences are impressions appearing to us and experienced by this I. Martinus claims that if this innermost I did not exist, there would be nothing that could be experiencing, thus no experiences at all. The I is found behind our physical appearance, our body, and it therefore transcends the physical. Thus, the I or self does not perish when the physical body does. On the contrary, the I is eternal. Death belongs to the physical world only. After some period of time, this eternal I is reincarnated in a new body. This is necessary to gain access to all the experiences of the physical world. In physical life, we are exposed to resistance from our environment and to various forms of suffering. This gradually leads to the development of greater intelligence and compassion. An animal is driven by instinct and does not possess these abilities. But Martinus says, through slow development over many millennia, they are nurtured in each human being. This occurs at both the individual and the societal level. We want to avoid discomfort which the surrounding environment causes. Gradually, we become able to master our surroundings to an ever higher degree, being able to actively avoid these discomforts. We do what we can to overcome the challenges of life, and this slowly develops our ability to think our intelligence. The people of the Stone Age came up with the idea of dressing in thick animal skin or lighting a fire to keep warm. Later, houses were built as shelter from the wind and weather. In recent centuries, technology, machinery, and so on were developed to improve life. So, a gradual development of an ever-increasing ability to think and overcome the discomforts of our surroundings. This is consistent, we might observe, with the evolution from animal to human described in the field of biology, but not with the materialist interpretation of the drive behind this evolution. According to Martinus's view, humans not only develop intelligence and empathy over the course of a lifetime, and as a species over the course of history, but also throughout the course of multiple lifetimes that stretch across history. Throughout their many lives, people experience countless sources of discomfort and suffering, which means we gradually become aware of others' experiences when we are exposed to something similar. In other words, we gradually develop the ability to put ourselves in other people's shoes, developing a higher and higher degree of empathy. We become less and less able to harm others or act selflessly at others' expense. The animal cannot afford to act selflessly or with compassion. The lion has to kill the zebra to avoid starving to death, but the ethically developed human being can. In this way, Martinus explains the development of an entirely selfless ethic, which is otherwise difficult to explain through the biological theory of evolution. Also, his view aligns with a positive interpretation of cultural and historical development, history as progress. We have and will continue to experience great suffering because of wars and other destructive conflicts. But in the long run, due to these ethical developments, humanity will move towards an international peaceful society, according to Martinus. Small signs of such progress have been showing during the last decades, but the time frame here is much longer, centuries or even millennia. Humankind is still far from such a society. Some might therefore view it as a mere utopia, and plenty of ups and downs are still ahead. More devastating wars will come, for instance, but it is precisely because of suffering on such a large scale that each individual human and thereby humanity at large will develop ethically, leading to eventual permanent world peace, he says. His spiritual science also aligns with the claims about ethics and selflessness present in the major world religions. According to Martinus, the founders of the religions presented these claims in a way that adapted the ideas to align with the people's states of development at the time as religious dogmas. But because of the continual intellectual development, a large part of humanity today is no longer willing to accept such unfounded dogmas, as I mentioned at the beginning. Instead, logical arguments are required for them to consider a view involving such an ethic. And for this exact reason, Martinus justifies this selfless ethic using logic and rational arguments. So we are all working our way upward to achieve greater understanding and insight, and working towards gaining an increasingly ethical attitude, according to Martinus. At some point, we'll reach a stage where we act almost entirely ethically and selflessly. Not because it is expected of us or because we believe it is the morally right thing to do, a moral duty, but simply because it has become an integral part of who we are as persons. It's not possible for us to act in any other way. We don't want to act in any other way. We only want to live in this extraordinarily ethical way. And the reverse is also the case. If we are at the earlier stages of this development, we possess more selfish tendencies. We have then not experienced the suffering that enables us to be fully compassionate. We cannot exist selflessly to the same extent as a more ethical human being. We may be able to act selflessly towards our loved ones, but we cannot muster unconditional love for everyone else. So there are limits to how ethically a given person can behave. Limits on what one can possibly want or be driven to do in certain situations. For one who has realized this, it does not make any sense to think badly of another human being who treats you poorly. The other simply does not have the experiences necessary to act in a more ethical way. Martinus illustrates this by comparing a thistle and a rose. It is as possible for a thistle to turn into a rose as it is for a human being to treat you better than he does. This does not mean that things cannot change. A constant development towards a more ethical mindset is true for all people. But right now, in this specific moment, the other is exactly who he is, acting accordingly. So, according to Martinus' spiritual scientific worldview, we have a certain level of free will. But as far as the general framework for one's will is concerned, we cannot act much differently than we already do, not least when it comes to our ethical attitude. According to Martinus' worldview, whenever we affect our surroundings, it is a release of impulses from our I via our bodies. These impulses move in circular orbits, meaning they will return to us at some point in the form of effects from our surroundings. This results in a kind of karma. If we act selflessly and treat others well, we will experience good things in the long run. And the opposite is true if we are evil or act selfishly at the expense of others. Also, when we have reached a certain stage in ethical development, a selfless attitude and way of being provides inner feelings of satisfaction and well-being. In this way, Martinus' spiritual science explains an interesting connection between ethical attitudes and happiness that is found in the psychological research on happiness. On average, selfless people are happier than selfish people. So, Martinus' view offers a strong incentive to act ethically and selflessly towards others. It is impossible, truly, to avoid suffering as long as you cause suffering in others, including more indirectly, such as by eating meat. So Martinus, like philosophers such as Plato and Spinoza, attempts to provide knowledge and insight that can lead to adopting a more ethical attitude and happier life. Okay, this has been just a brief outline of some of the basic aspects of Martinus' worldview. Life after death, reincarnation, karma, future world peace, personal development, wisdom, and selflessness, even the meaning of life. Quite a different worldview than the materialist view. Therefore, the focus on a rational explanatory foundation on Martinus' part. His view does include many more elements, and a deeper examination of his worldview and the arguments he provides are left for other videos. If Martinus' worldview is the correct one, then the fundamental nature of reality itself raises important questions for us about the meaning of life. How do I want to live my life? How do I want to act towards others? What are the most important aspects of this life I find myself in? Thanks.